Well, he is a renowned husband, as you can tell on his Twitter profile, producer, writer, actor. It is the great Dean Butler on Twitter at Dean M. Butler, a man who has had so much success as an actor, which we're going to talk about, but also in other areas of entertainment, from producing and putting together features and other programming. So it even extends to sports. So we're going to have a lot of fun diving into his career, known so much for his time with the show Little House on the Prairie. Played a major role there. You've heard of shows like Jag and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Dean has made appearances there as well. One of and two of the many places that you have found him over the
Well,
years.
no, and we can't forget we did 2 seasons of the new Gidget where I went from being manly to moondoggy. And that was in the mid 80s. And that was a lot of fun. That was, sort of almost right after Little House. And so almost 3 seasons there. So that was really fun.
Well, that goes to show you how diverse and how talented you are as an actor, that you can play so many different roles.
Yeah, I could go from a buckboard to a surfboard. Yeah. And I really couldn't deal with either one of them, but I got to pretend I could.
Oh, stop it. You're just being humble.
Well,
we're going to have a lot of fun. And then obviously the other really neat thing about Dean is that his work in sports programming, working closely with David Feherty with his work on Golf Channel and the really neat series that's been put out with that. So we'll ask Dean about that as well. I'm Bryan Fenley. I'm an anchor at Fox Sports Radio, and certainly looking forward to spotlighting the career of Dean Butler. And let's get started, Dean. Let's have some fun. Let's go right into David Feherty, and a guy who I've loved. I think he's one of the most entertaining, most comedic men in sports television today. You having the opportunity to put together a show with him, how did that test your creative skills? Because here you are as someone who has been known so well for your time on camera, and now you're sort of taking a different role.
Well, what I've come to understand is that everything that we do in our lives connects to everything else, particularly in the realms of entertainment. Working on camera, working behind the camera. I think I was able to help David in ways, particularly when he was standing up in front of live audiences. I could encourage him and support him in ways. I mean, look, David is anybody who's watched David knows he's a naturally engaging, funny, razor sharp wit, very snappy, fast intellect, but he hadn't spent a lot of time in front of crowds. And so I was able to talk to him about that and really just encouraging him to slow everything down a little bit and allow it to come to him, which he certainly, as an athlete, he certainly understood that. So I think that athletes let the game come to them as opposed to forcing them their way into the game. So I think David, that was an analogy that David could relate to. I just think I agree with you, Bryan. I think David, after working with him for 10 years, I was sort of the show leading producer on about 80 of the episodes of the 150 episodes that we did over the 10-year period of time, and then was involved in all the live shows that we did. But it was a very tight little team at Golf Channel. There were about 8 of us that were involved in it, that really at the center of it, that really ran it, conceptualized it, closely worked with David. He just, as a talent to work with talent, he really was just a dream. A very low maintenance guy. I mean, the biggest maintenance is just making sure he's getting there on time, making sure he doesn't miss a plane, making sure he's met at the airport. But as talent, he never looked at a cut. He never needed to make a suggestion. It was really a dream. He trusted us to make the program.
Wow.
And we found the program, over 10 years. I mean, the program evolved through a 10-year period. And I think we arrived at a formula for David that worked and that worked for the guests. and an editorial style, a graphic style, a packaging style evolves through the 10 years. But he never really interfered with that. He just showed up. He did the conversations. He did some of the crazy things that we asked him to do. I mean, I was just watching a little highlight reel. I mean,
Yeah.
thinking about, David getting into the water with Jack Nicklaus pretending to be the fish and allowing Jack Nicklaus to catch. Of course, Jack is the great fisherman.
Yeah.
And David got a horrible ear infection from having done that, but he
Oh,
got in the
wow.
water. The water was filthy. This was at the, where Jack was storing his fleet of boats. I mean, there's
Oh my
oil everywhere. It
gosh.
was a total mess. David got in the water. He did that. He's so willing. He went into the water. He dove into an 18-inch fountain at Stanford with Michelle Wee, and ripped up his elbows. I'm just looking at some of the other lists here. Oh, well, I mean, where he allowed Tony Romo to throw right into the Twins bullpen, as David liked to throw it. Standing there with the sun in his eyes, and Tony Romo drills this pass in there and just like nails him.
Wow.
And David allowed that stuff to happen in the interest of the comedy. Probably the most daring thing that David did, and it became a signature moment in the program, is when he got down on the ground, put a T in his mouth, and allowed John Daly to hit the ball out of his mouth.
Oh, that's so scary.
It was scary. And I was standing right there, and our production manager, David Haas, was there. We're there with the crew, and David's just being spontaneous.
Wow.
John Daly says, "How about we do this?" There wasn't a moment's hesitation. He didn't look over to see what we thought. We begged him not to do it. David insisted that John's a pro, no problem. And sure enough, Daly's just saying, "Hurry up, get down there, put it in your mouth." And Daly wound up, and he didn't like back off this swing.
Oh,
He went right through it. And it's flashed through my head so many times, Brian.
yeah.
If Daly had been off by half an inch, that could have been a life ender.
Yeah.
I mean, it really could have been a life ender. And one of the things that concerned us afterwards, and I didn't realize that it was at the moment, I was just so grateful that David got up from that with no ill effects. I wasn't thinking about it as this great signature moment. Well, when we reviewed the footage from the shoot, and our executive producer, Keith Allo, saw this moment, it was like, oh my God, this is it. And it became the defining moment of the series.
Wow.
And I'm just so grateful and it said everything about his spontaneity, his fearlessness, the complete, not disregard, because he doesn't have disregard for himself, but he wasn't going to let go of something that was going to be a terrific moment.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid of that. And that he carried through 10 years on the show. Now, look, admittedly, as the show went on, he was less willing to dive into shallow water, do those things, because he got injured doing these things. And he finally had to say, guys, I just am not going to do that anymore. But those moments define who David Feherty is. And as you can tell, I have enormous respect for David as a writer, as an on-camera presence. I mean, you've watched David on camera. David holds the screen. There's that magical quality that people have. You can point a camera at David, and he holds that space. And he can take as long a pause as he wants. He doesn't feel like he needs to fill it. He just allows moments to happen. It's really, really special. And I don't think we finished 10 years at Golf Channel. There is this chance that there will be another life for David. I can't say anything about that in terms of what it would be.
Yeah.
But people who love David can have some hope that the time of David Feherty and wonderful interviews and unique situations is not done. So which would be we'd all love it if that could happen.
I love the tease, and I'm very excited to hear about that. How did you and David first meet? And so, how did the union happen between, okay, I've got this production that company that I'm behind, and I have all these skill sets, and then here's David, and then what brought both of you together?
Well, okay, what brought me, and it's look, I have no business connection to the production. The
Okay,
production was wholly owned by Golf Channel.
okay,
Um, I have worked over the period of time as a producer. I've been a producer, which is now like 22, 23 years. I have worked multiple times in motorsports, at the Olympics, and then at Golf Channel with an executive producer named Keith Allo. And Keith and I met during the time that he was doing Champ Car racing. He was
wow,
he was the executive vice president of Champ Car, responsible for television. I was working for a very small production company that specialized in this niche world of motorsports, shooting beautiful film. And we were sort of the NFL films of
yeah,
motorsports, is sort of what that was. It was a company called Gears. And we did that. And Keith and I met during some interaction, and he just called me where Feherty was concerned. He just called me out of the blue. They were 5 days away from shooting their first thing. And he
okay,
just called me out of the blue and said, would you like to produce this show?
wow,
Now, it's all working. Everything is coming together. All the deals are made, the crew's hired, all that.
sure.
I just want you to come in and be there, be in the editing room, help craft the shows. That's what I was invited to do.
Wow.
And really one of the great gifts and I've had a few great gifts in my career, and having the opportunity to continually collaborate with Keith, and then of course the opportunity that he gave me to meet and interact with David. And I just met David cold over a breakfast one morning,
Wow.
and he just walks in. He walks in and he's a little disheveled, and David could walk into a room in the morning feeling like he barely combed his hair, his
Yeah.
shirt sort of wrinkled like he'd slept in it, which he probably did. And he is just who he is,
Mhm.
Bryan.
Yeah.
That's one of the great things about Feherty, is he is completely authentic. What you see is what you get. And I think audiences get that about him. They detect it, uh, and the fun ensues. I think he's one of the great reactors
Hmm.
that I've been around. David doesn't drive content. David is like the counterpuncher. And so when someone's really a live wire, David can swing with anybody.
Wow.
He just can swing with anybody, and it's just great. And if someone's a little more reticent, David is respectful, and he's quiet with that person. He doesn't feel he doesn't feel like he needs to goose the energy.
Yeah.
He allows the room to be in the space it's in.
Wow.
Yeah. But look, you're around, you've spent your career around great interviewers. You're a good interviewer yourself. You read the temperature of the room, and I
Yeah.
think David does that exceptionally well.
Yeah, he does it as best as anybody. We're talking with Dean Butler, who just getting involved and started and talking about his career from what he's doing off the camera, production wise, and you also have done so much on screen, which I want to get to in just a second. I'm Bryan
Mhm.
Fenley, an anchor for Fox Sports Radio, but sort of piggybacking off the point of your role off the screen as a producer. When did you first channel in your love and become infatuated with that element of the business, and to a point where you even started your own production company and
Right.
let yourself, give it yourself a little hiatus from the acting and then channel your creative juices in another direction as well?
Well, it was interesting. I think in the mid 1990s, I was starting to feel like I was just starting to feel like acting was not going to be um, a long-term thing for me. As much as I worked on television, I've worked on Broadway, I've done different things like that, but it just didn't feel like it was going to continue. And I had just seen the wonderful um, PBS documentary, The Civil War.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, so Ken Burns redefined television documentary with that and turned it into something epic and beautiful and raised the level of what that was. And I was fascinated by what he did. So I found a way with that, knowing nothing about how I would do that. I found a way to just channeling Ken Burns, as best I could, not knowing anything, to try and recreate that kind of feeling using music and pictures and all of these things. And it was so incredibly satisfying to me. As an actor, you are the last one hired generally,
Okay.
and you are the first one done. So you're cast at the last moment. You come in, you do your work, and they say bye bye, and then the film or the videotape goes to the editing room. And I came to feel like they were the ones who were really having the most fun. They were the ones they had invented this thing. The producers had invented it, nurtured it, cast it, built everything, and then they got to craft it and put it together. And I loved that immersion that I discovered for myself, starting with a blank screen and carrying that through to whatever the final outcome was. But I had a chance to touch it at every phase. And having worked for years with one of the great presences in television, I know we want to talk about Little House later, but
Yeah.
Michael and his and his producer Kent McCrae, and the whole group of people that they had brought together to make Little House, and the same group of people were involved in Bonanza, were involved in Highway to Heaven, were involved in The High Chaparral, were involved in all of these different programs. I got an opportunity to watch the best of the best in television for the 5 seasons that I was there. And some of that, and editors, post audio, I would go to the editing room, and the editor would like make me put on a gag so I wouldn't open my mouth. He said, the first question you ask, you're out of here. You can watch, but don't
Yeah.
ask anything. And so I tried to be quiet, and then I would go to post audio sessions where the shows were mixed, and I was absolutely fascinated by that. So when I got a chance to produce myself, I got to touch all of that. And so for me, the joy is starting with the blank computer screen and coming out with the thing at the other end. And that joy has, once I discovered that, and I think there's always been the sort of the techno nerd in me anyway.
Okay.
And I think it's a big part of who I am. I was the kid. I was the kid in school who was running the projectors and was the lighting guy. And, I was that kid in elementary school and in high school. And I took it to performance,
Okay.
but at the core of me, it's the how are we going to do this that's really always fascinated me. So
Yes.
that has been the center of everything that I've done, is that inquisitiveness, is how are we going to do this?
Yeah, so essentially, being an actor is part of the spectrum, or just part of how you
Right,
can display the creativity. But
right,
by then stepping outside of it, you are able to go the whole well-rounded, full spectrum of
right.
how you can be creative, and you certainly aren't shortchanged or hampered in any way when you have that looking from above kind of feeling, kind of an omnipresent feeling as well. And if I'm not mistaken, Dean, you've had work on PBS like Ken Burns.
Everything, sir. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. We, if I'm not, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was going to say, if I'm not mistaken, like Ken Burns, you've had stuff on PBS as well.
I did I did a music special for PBS featuring the music that what Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote about in her Little House books, which was more of a live concert situation. So it was not a doc in that sense. We had some, interstitial material that was edited into the piece, but the core of the show was a music show. And, we went to Nashville and we shot that in front of a live audience, small live audience at a place called the Loveless Barn. And, it became a DVD and it became a live album and it became all these things. And I loved being, again, process. I loved being a part of the process. And I think for me in that situation and in so many things, I feel like I have been fortunate enough to surround myself with really talented people. And when I detect that someone really knows something, I just want to be a sponge and absorb that material, that information that they have to share, and then hopefully have gained some of that knowledge and information, and I can use it myself. But I love being surrounded by really talented people. It's I mean, who doesn't really? It's magical to be with people who really know what they're doing. And this group that I had for Paz Fiddle, the Music of America is what the special was called. Really great group of people, director, producers, line producers, audio people, all of that. I mean, just really first rate. It was great stuff. I keep digressing, Brian.
No, I love this. I love
digressing.
This. No, this is good.
Yeah. So, so what was the core of the question?
So no, you actually hit right on it, because you talked about how you have launched your own production company.
Right.
And it's funny that you bring up, all these other people that you brought on to hire and you worked with that are talented, but you forgot to mention that you yourself are pretty talented as well. And so let's not forget, let's let you could be a little braggadocious on this little program here, don't worry about that. But what I wanted to ask you, Dean, is sort of off that topic, or actually kind of continuing with that topic. What are you working on now? What can we see from you these days?
Well, right now, and you're not going to see anything in the immediate time, but right now, I am developing what I think is going to turn into a spectacular documentary about the history of women's professional basketball.
Oh, wow.
Which is going to be fascinating, and a story that goes back to 1891, when the first woman put a ball in James Naismith's peach basket, and going forward to all those years, 6-on-6 basketball, and then to Title IX and the evolution of the women's college game. And then in 1978, the founding of the WBL, which was the first women's professional basketball league. And then 4 other leagues between there and what has become the WNBA, which has become the peak of women's basketball. But there's a story of courage and guts and a willingness to step into a realm that women were not really welcomed in. Sure. But they came to play, they wanted to play, it was their life dream to play. So it's an empowerment story. And I'm really, really excited about it. And if all goes well, Brian,
yes,
maybe 2022, around the 50th anniversary of Title IX.
Wow.
Is what we're looking at. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you about a timeline on that. And as far as just in your own world, in your own life, Dean, where you've had to have an act of courage and in a way in which, you didn't know what was going to come from it. I look at your early acting career and you put yourself out there, and who knows if you didn't, where your life would have gone. So sort of going and pivoting, to take a basketball term, to the acting side of what you've done. What did the executives see in you early on where they thought, man, this guy as an actor has something really special going? And then early on, here you are on Little House, and you're having a humongous role.
Well, I think that I've come to believe that actors get the parts they're supposed to get. We don't get the part. Now, look, when you hit a certain phase, like Robert De Niro can do anything Robert De Niro wants to do.
Sure.
If Tom Cruise should decide he wants to do Shakespeare, Tom Cruise could do Shakespeare. But in the beginning, Tom Cruise, all actors are cast very close to who they are. I think that's in most cases, that's true. There may be some some anomalies there where people are cast way off type or way off what they look like and
Mm,
sound like. But in the beginning, we are cast as what we are, because people who run television and film, it's different when you're in high school and college, and as a senior in high school, you can play Willie Loman. But when you get to the point where you're going to become a professional and you're 22 years old, you're not getting anywhere near Willie Loman. You may get to play Biff, but you're not going to be
ah,
You're not going to be Willie Loman. It's just not going to happen. And they will wait, because there's such a huge pool of talent, Brian.
mm,
They'll wait till Willie Loman, whatever that vision of Willie Loman that they have in their heads, or someone comes in and just creates a vision
mhm,
for them that makes it what it is. So
ah,
for me as a young actor, I'm walking in the door and look, I have been blessed. I think I was blessed aesthetically by two very beautiful parents, who made me, who just by the good fortune of DNA
yeah,
gave me a look that I have, that I had nothing to do with. It's just I evolve into whatever it is that I am, and I had an appetite for it. I think that's really what it takes in the beginning, is
okay,
you have to have an appetite for it.
yeah,
You have to be willing to walk into the room and take a shot that you might be able to get it done. And you have to be, although I don't think anyone really thinks about this, but really you have to be prepared to walk into a room and suck.
yeah,
Like you have to be okay with that on some level. Um, and I think as a young actor, I was willing to be bad. And look, and some people would say, and you got really good at it, and you extended that through lots of things. But I was willing to. I had an appetite, and I was willing to put myself out there. And I mean, that's the point that you've made. I think
yeah,
young actors have to be willing to do that. Now, what happens after that? One never knows. But if you walk in the door and you're honest and you bring something that feels authentic and that's right for the thing that you're auditioning for. And as it turned out, I was very right for Little House in so many ways. I mean, not only was I the right look for Little House and what they were looking for, but I had been raised in a way, I was a very well behaved young man. I was respectful. I'd been raised in the country. I'd grown up around horses. I'd ridden my
mm,
whole life. I dug holes and pitched hay and stacked bales, and you know, I built fences, and so I was comfortable with the idea of it. And I think you just sort of walk in the door with that. And look, Michael didn't know that. I didn't tell him, um, but I think he just got a sense about me as when you're sitting in that chair and you're watching actor after actor after actor come in the door, something hits you, and it happens in about 10 seconds.
uh-huh,
I mean, these decisions are made in about 10 seconds, really. Everything that happens after that 10 seconds is either confirming or tearing down the impression that was made in the first 10 seconds. In the beginning as an actor, you feel like if I could just be in the room long enough
ah,
if I could just be in the room long enough to make an impression, what you really find out is you want to get out of the room as fast as you can. Come in, deliver the goods, and get out. And don't give people a lot of reasons to wonder why maybe they had the wrong impression.
ah,
I think you're rarely going to if you walk in the room and it's not going well, you're not going to turn that meeting. It's just not going to turn. The impression's been made. And once you realize that, if it isn't going well, you want that meeting to leave their consciousness as quickly as possible. You do not want to remind them why it didn't go well, so that they have this impression that's been sealed in their minds. So, and when it goes well, you want to go in, do what you do, say thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and leave. And I think that I was fortunate in the early part of the career to have those kinds of meetings where I could walk in the door and essentially be myself. I mean, really, in Hollywood, you're really being asked to play yourself. I mean, the essence of movie stardom, and television is not movie stardom, but the theory is the essence of movie stardom is people play themselves. I mean, people hired John Wayne not because he was not because he was a brilliant actor, but he was a brilliant presence.
Yes.
He was a guy that you just wanted to be around. You trusted him. Whatever it was about John Wayne that worked, he brought it. He just brought it. He brought it year after year after year after year, and people loved him for it. And he became this iconic presence in film. And I think if you look at most careers of great movie stars, they are hired to bring themselves. The names change, the circumstances change, all that. But basically, they're being asked to operate within a realm that is who they are, because who they are is so appealing and so charming that you want more of that. Or in the case of villains, it's so dark and despicable that you want to, you just expect that. When you see them, they're going to be bad. And I think that's a big part of what casting is identifying those archetypal presences that people have, and for the actor to be comfortable enough with what that presence is that they have, that they just own. I think actors spend years trying to figure out what it is that they've got. Who am I? And then there's some young actors who just walk in the door and they don't question who they are. They just bring it. And so they don't have to go through years of trying to figure it out. They've sidestepped that whole process, and they just bring what they are. And it is the great gift of doing this work, is to be comfortable enough in your own skin to bring yourself to situations. Again, circumstances change, but how you react to those circumstances. If you are a movie star, a television star, people want you simply to respond to those situations as you do.
Yeah.
That's what they want. In your work, people want you to just be Bryan Fenley.
That's true. That's true.
They don't want you to be Vin Scully. They want you to be Bryan. You might dream of being Vin Scully. You might have dreamed about that at some point in your life, or Al Michaels or whatever. But bottom line, you've got to be the best Bryan Fenley that you can be. That's really the task. And when you look at all the great people, whether they be performers, broadcasters, they have figured out what the best version of themselves is, and they bring it.
Yeah.
And they make no apologies for it. They bring it. And that's what it's all about.
Dean, that's so well said. And I think that early on in my career, and I certainly have a long way to go, but we try to be somebody else because we idolize them growing up.
Of course.
And that's because we're not comfortable with ourselves at times. And then all of a sudden, the more you do it, the more repetition that comes, the more you say, hey, I can be myself and have my own brand, have my own personality, and that can be appealing. So let's go that direction. And it's so interesting because knowing your background growing up in the countryside, how with Little House, this was like you in your natural habitat. And so it was so
totally
easy
was
for you.
Totally
So
was, yeah.
by all of the attention that you got, the recognition from being in that show for those years, how has your life changed ever since that show in a way that you did not think was going to happen or was possible before starting with that program?
Well, I think, from the very beginning, at that point in time, so this was 1979. So now we're talking 42 years ago. On NBC, and Little House was a top 10 show. So every week it was 20 million people watching every week. And, number one shows on television, I mean, the Super Bowl obviously gets a massive audience, but there are very few primetime programs in today's landscape with all of the competition that's out there and all the choices that people have. there are very few situations where an audience of 20 million people is going to show up and watch something. So from that, from the first night that I was on, the next day, my life was different.
Wow.
I walked out on the street. I was completely anonymous on Sunday. By Tuesday morning, it's not that everybody knew me because everybody wasn't watching, but a whole lot of people knew me at that point. And I think anybody who's experienced that, and I experienced it on a modest level between like people, when I think of people of my era, like, when John Travolta started doing Welcome Back, Kotter, his life became a completely different animal. And television has, as you know, I mean, television has this massive capacity. Even with diluted audiences, it's still the best message conveyor on planet Earth. If in terms of like, if you can lock up a group of people for a period of time, there's still nothing stronger than television. It's shifting. Expectations are changing about what constitutes success. But if you look at television or as a way of getting a message out, there is no more powerful place to do that than primetime television. I mean, just period. There is no more powerful place than that. So you feel that right away. And then jumping forward through the years, Little House has been this amazing gift. Because people just flat out loved it. We became part of people's families, and television has that ability, where you're coming into someone's world. They turn on their box and you are there with them in their space.
Yes.
And so you become part of their family for that hour that you're with them, or a half hour, whatever it is that you're doing, you become part of their world. And there is look, as the actor, you're not part of that exchange. You've done something, but you're not experiencing it the way the audience is. And those people who watch and enjoy and respond, there's a level of affection that's developed between themselves and the people they are watching and admiring on television, enjoying, laughing with, whatever it is that person is generating for that audience. There's that connection and it sticks. And I have to tell you, through 40 years now, the level of affection, the warmth, the connection to this Little House on the Prairie world created by this woman who at 65 years sits down to write her Little House on the Prairie books. These books became loved family experiences where people could celebrate living in a simpler time, where life wasn't easy, but there was love, there was compassion, there was acceptance, and there was a belief that we're all going to be okay in the toughest circumstances. And Little House brought that feeling. While Michael didn't stick strictly to the books because it just wasn't possible to do 10 years of shows off these 9 books, just couldn't do it. But the major threads that were pulled through the series, those were part of the books. And people who know the material, know both the series and the books, know that there was a thread pulled that was, and I was at the tail end of that thread. My appearance on the program was sort of, in the books was sort of halfway or a little more than halfway through the books. But this Almanza Wilder character was going to become very important in the life of these books. And so, not only the television audience embraces you, but you have a whole group of people who have grown up with some vision of what this character is in their mind's eye as readers. And suddenly you're there and you become, not for everybody. Some people would look at it and say, no, that can't help me. So I see something completely different. But you become, for a great many people, how they personify these people who they have loved on paper for years. And now with television, you become the personification of that for millions who maybe have never read the books, but suddenly you're there and all that affection comes to you. And, it was an amazing time during those years being on the program because of that because of that level of affection that was coming at me all the time. And then it has just been this sustained familial kind of association with this wonderful material. And it is really, truly, Brian, it's been the gift of a lifetime. It
Oh,
really, truly has. No, I mean, no question about it. The debt I owe, the respect I have for the people who gave me the opportunity to participate in this, I just have undying appreciation for what they did for my life. And I have tried to be, I'll be in all candor, I have tried to be very respectful of that. I've tried to make choices. Look, I've made a few mistakes along the way in terms of things that I've done, um, but for the most part, I have been, on the whole, highly respectful of what that means, of what Little House means to people, and I've tried to give people that. That's just been an important part because it's given me so much. I want to give it back to them. So, all the things that I've done through the years, I mean, my little we did all the DVD bonus content for Little House for a full series collection. We did like 8 hours of stuff, and I've done two documentaries about Little House. One called Almanza Wilder: Life Before Laura, which is based around Laura's Farmer Boy book, and then another one called Little House on the Prairie: The Legacy of Laura Ingalls Wilder, which is sort of a survey journey through her experience as a writer, going from what was her youth to how she came as an older woman to write these stories. And so it's a very circular thing, and it mirrors in a lot of ways what was done just in this last December on American Masters, where PBS did Laura Ingalls Wilder: Prairie to Page, which was a beautiful, beautiful, in-depth telling of Laura's life and her journey as a writer. And so we had touched some of that material, and I was fortunate to be able to participate in that program and talk about Little House from the television perspective, along with some of our other cast members. But it's just been the gift that keeps on giving, Brian. It's just been this incredible, incredible gift. And look, if it all stopped cold now, the gift has been so good. I could never,
oh,
I mean, no, I could
yeah.
never feel like it's been anything but incredible, totally incredible in my life. And um, so, well, you're getting it from me. I mean,
Yeah.
I am full on grateful for everything that Little House brought me. And Michael sort of knew this. He said, this show is going to, whether you do things that are different from this or not, but this show is the genesis of whatever your career will be, and it will always be part of your life. And there are so many and there are so many shows that I could have been a part of, that I would be grateful not to have it be the genesis of my professional life. I mean, I'm just very proud that Little House is that. So
I, I,
it's been good, Brian. It's been
yes, it
very good.
has,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
you have said, and I really sense the gratitude, and I think that to this day, that feeling, diving into that, it seems that it comes off as very authentic and real, and why you endear yourself to the the followers of the show, and why people have such an emotional connection to what you do, because I can really feel deep down how much this meant to you, and
No
and
question.
and, and I think that that realness is something that all of the viewers could sense from you as well, and why, even like you said, to this day, it's a show that people look and adore. And I've got one more question for you, Dean.
Mhm.
And I'm Bryan Fenley, and this is the great Dean Butler. Where's the most unforeseen place that you have been recognized?
Oh boy.
Where you did not see it coming, and somebody comes up to you and says, "Are you the?" Yeah.
Um, well, I guess what. Okay, I can answer that question in this way. Years ago, I was on the road in Japan.
Okay.
And the number of Japanese people that walked up to me on the street in
Wow.
in Tokyo to sort of point and giggle and do all of that. And look, I was there doing a production of West Side Story in Tokyo, so people sort of knew I was there. But what I didn't really anticipate in going to Japan, and I just didn't know how huge Little House was in Japan, and it was to have the impact of the program cross through cultures like that. And and the program has been on in 140 countries around the world. It's been translated into 40 languages. It's you know I'm sure I could go anywhere in the civilized world and and see some version of myself speaking, doing these scenes. One of the things that was sort of a trip to me is to read years ago, and this was during the Reagan administration, that the Ayatollah Khomeini was a big fan of Little House.
Really?
Yeah, it was one of the few American programs that he allowed in Iran. And of course, the reason, when you think about it, is so obvious. Look at these people with their carts and their wagons and their horses, and we have nothing to fear from these people. They're just, this is if that's America,
Yeah.
we're good with them. We can handle that. And I think that was part of it. And then, of course, just the messages were just really positive. But the Ayatollah dug us, and
Fascinating.
we were also one of Ronald Reagan's favorite programs too, which was a great
Fascinating.
source of pride. And I got to meet him one time and
Wow.
exchange that. And yeah, so the show has touched so many people. It's really been, it's amazing. So wherever you go, it's
Yeah.
oh, I was in McAllen, Texas. Oh, and now I'm gonna. It's horrible because I can't remember her name.
Oh,
But
don't
but
worry.
but this I'm sorry, but this really big country western star. I was going to her concert. I was invited to go to a concert. I'm sitting there in the third row, and she's in the middle of her. I've never met her, and she looks down at me from the stage and points to me.
Oh, wow.
Is like, and I get invited backstage after the show to meet her and say hello. And that's just sort of the stuff that you don't expect that happens. You're there to be an audience member, you're there enjoying the show, and suddenly you realize that, something that you've done has touched somebody. And so, it's that kind of stuff. It has been the great entree. It has never failed to be a really
Wow.
nice entree to whatever situation, and it has had effect. It has had an effect in my producing career as well, because people are just sort of dig it. They think it's really fun, and so you become touched with that, with something that they've really loved in their lives. And look, if they don't, even if they never watched it, they know what it was. They know the title. So,
Yeah.
it's all good. It's all good. Boy, I could just go on and on, Bryan.
We're gonna do this again. How about this? That's a tease. That in the business is a tease. Dean has lived the fabulous life, the inspirational life. He's got so much more that he is going to channel in as far as his creative juices into this business. I'm excited to hear about some of the upcoming productions that you're working on. I know you have a
Thanks,
lot of
Bryan.
different things that you're playing with down the road, and
Yeah,
would love to revisit those as we get closer to making
sure.
those out and
We can
available
do
to the
that.
public. And
Yeah, reach back to me in sort of like second quarter 2022.
perfect. Perfect.
I mean, if not before, but
Yeah.
definitely then.
Yeah, definitely before that.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
certainly
yeah,
would love to kind of keep tabs and stay in touch with you
yeah.
before then. But yeah, I'm excited for that and appreciate you. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I think a whole lot of people are going to enjoy hearing your mindset through some of the big moments of your life, and how you view them to this day, and how what I sense from across your life. And I think one of the reasons you are so endearing is you're grateful. You are so grateful for everything you've
Oh,
done,
thanks.
and I think that that's why you're a beloved member of the the show business community, because you really appreciate your roots, and you never forget them, even for as far as you've come. So
Thank you, Brian. It's been a pleasure to be with you. And I thought I was going to be a fish out of water, but in your show,
no,
but you got me started.